Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Paweł to the stage. No pressure.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. And first of all, thank you to Luke, Mike, and the whole QbDVision team for organizing and bringing us together here. So, a few words of introduction of myself. Yes, my name is Paweł. I'm part of the McKinsey team. I'm the knowledge expert, so it's not a typical consulting role. I'm based in Poland in the Polish Knowledge Center, and I joined McKinsey, also to my surprise, straight from the university, graduating with biotechnology degree. And I found myself in the space of management consulting. But luckily, I was able to work in the space of pharma R&D and the topics that are very close to my scientific heart and the technical development. I'm excited to be here and to meet the whole group here for two reasons. Not only because the topic itself is close to my scientific heart and important to the patients and the population, but also because I'm a true believer in the pre-competitive collaboration, right? The whole spirit of sharing experiences, learning from each other. This is something that I actually had a chance to experience, and that's something that Luke already alluded to. Do we have a clicker here? Sorry, is that the one? Okay, there we go. So, and what I'm referring to is the CMC forum and then benchmarking service line that we've established at McKinsey back in 2011. And it all started with just a handful of small molecule CMC leaders that wanted to come together and benchmark themselves to understand what are the typical resourcing levels, what are the operating models seen across the industry, to also learn from each other and share some of the experiences. And from this one-off exercise of the offline benchmark that we've run, it quickly turned into a pretty robust multi-year collaboration across the industry, convening leaders from top CMC organizations, initially from small molecule world, but very quickly the biologics counterparts got to know about it, and they said that they want one too, so we branched out the biologics one. So we've been running those annual benchmarks and CMC roundtables twice a year for both of those cohorts for the last 12 years. During that time, we touched basically every aspect of CMC operations, from strategy, organization, operations, technology, acceleration, you name it. And one of the topics that has been more and more often picked up as the top one in the recent years was about digital. And this is quite a wide term in general. That's why we also approach it from different angles. We talked about digital architecture. We talked about digital transformations. We talked about adoption of in silico models for CMC workflows. And more recently, of course, we cannot just avoid it, is the adoption of generative AI for CMC. So with this experience, I just wanted to say that one thing that I really appreciate is this openness and spirit of collaboration that we're experiencing during all of those interactions and discussions. And this is something that I'm very much looking forward to today, and I hope to experience a similar thing. And I also see some familiar faces from the forum, so I would love this event to be complementary and not necessarily a competition to any other fora, because we are stronger as a group. So today's presentation In today's presentation, I will talk a little bit about general trends that are shaping the CMC industry. We're going to talk where we are in the whole digital transformation journey. What are the key elements of the vision for the future and where we are against delivering towards those. And then we're going to talk and explore some of the success stories and then success factors that made some of those transformations successful. So, very briefly about the key forces that are somehow shaping where the CMC organizations need to operate on. First and foremost, acceleration. We are hearing the increasing expectations to accelerate development pipelines from all over the place. It comes directly from the patients, it comes from the R&D executives, and considering that the cycle times are shrinking, CMC may see themselves on the critical path more and more often. The second one is productivity. We are seeing that the probability of success is rather stagnant. We are not seeing huge improvements in this area over time. And when we combine it with the increasing cost pressures coming from the economy, from additional regulations that are coming into life, and add to that the increasing complexity of the pipelines that CMC needs to deliver, we are finding ourselves in the situation where CMC will need to deliver more, oftentimes with less. The next one around technology. Very broad topic. It includes both the digital automation, but also those technologies that are core to CMC processes, including capabilities related to new modalities that are hitting the pipelines. Data. Strongly linked with technology, but we are experiencing more and more formats. The volumes of the data are also increasing, and the CMC organizations will need to figure out how to really leverage the wealth of data that we are sitting on, and in many cases, we are completely ignoring or just not able to explore. And last but not least is the topic of sustainability. That has been a very hot topic several years ago. Then, of course, the global disruptions derailed it a little bit and it was parked, but we are seeing that this is coming back to the top of the agendas of pharma executives. And what that means is that any targets that are set at the corporate levels will be then cascaded down and, of course, will also eventually reach the CMC shop. So, looking at this wealth of forces that are changing the landscape, the CMC leaders need to look closer at the performance of their CMC organization. And we've got four main value drivers that we typically observe and measure. It's cost, FTE efficiency, speed, and quality. We already discussed speed very briefly. The expectations will be only increasing. On quality, there is typically no trade-offs that we can allow there. But I wanted to pause for a moment on the aspect of cost efficiency. From our research and then our analysis of the benchmarks that we've been running with the CMC Forum group, we've learned that there is a pretty wide range of performance between the peers across the industry. And when we look only at the gap between the median performance and the top quartile performance, it reaches 40% in terms of the costs and 30% in terms of FTE efficiency. It may not seem significant, but if we consider the largest CMC organizations from global pharmacos, these actually translate into hundreds of millions of dollars and hundreds of FTEs that could be redeployed to other innovation and priority topics in the pipeline. So, of course, the overall productivity and efficiency of the CMC organization comes from different elements. You need to consider your strategy, operating model, footprint, organization, outsourcing strategy, and so on. But if we ask the CMC leaders what are the top levers for improvement in productivity in CMC, in most of the cases among the top three we'll hear digital and/or automation. So this is not surprising that basically all of the leading CMC organizations are at some stage of their digital transformation, and many of them admit that they've started basically already in the last decade. So what we could expect is that CMC industry has transformed quite well digitally throughout all of those years. And the answer is yes and no, depending on what areas we are actually looking at. So if we consider how you get the data, what you do with data, and how you connect the dots, on this first aspect of digitization, we're seeing pretty advanced status where paper is generally gone. There are some islands where companies are still using it in like paper, but the batch records where paper can still exist, but in general, digital type of data is the predominant format. Next, in the space of what you do with data, we talk about advanced analytics and prediction modeling. And what we've been seeing is that over the last several years, many of the organizations build up those capabilities internally, build up the teams that are dedicated to driving this innovation. It includes the roles that are not traditional roles for the CMC organization, like data scientists, data engineers, and so on. And then the last piece here is the data integration. And this is where basically the whole industry is struggling. And I'm not talking about CMC only, but every part of the pharmaceutical and beyond pharma are struggling with the process of combining everything in a meaningful way. So this is the biggest gap to really unlock the potential of the digital transformation. Now, if we know where we stand roughly today, I wanted to take a moment to think what it could look like in the future. So when we think about the CMC vision for the future, it's basically based on three main pillars. The first one is predictive modeling, second one automation, and the third one broader CMC digitalization. Predictive models, basically all about reducing the need for running wet-lab experiments and redeploying all the energy and time that the scientists spend on that on the actual decision-making and thinking about the better science, not necessarily running the physical experiments in the lab. Automation, similarly, not necessarily reducing amount of work, but automating it so that the most important asset of the CMC organization, which is your staff, is focusing on really truly value-adding activities and not doing the manual work that has no added impact. And the third one, CMC digitalization, is about creating the whole ecosystem to connect all the information and all the data that we are gathering from all areas of CMC. And we're talking here not only about the connecting elements in a single lab so that it's all steered centrally. We're talking about truly following the data along the life cycle of individual project to track it from preclinical, also from research up until commercialization, but also looking across the portfolio to understand the relations between findings that we got from different projects in the pipeline. So to fulfill this vision, we of course need to look at it in somehow isolated cases that will, use cases that will need to cover the full life cycle of the CMC development. And we're talking here first about the in silico models that will improve the development of drug substance, drug product, but also analytical methods. Then if we move further into the GMP space, It means that we'll have full real-time monitoring and eventually real-time release capabilities, plus the predictive models will help to improve the yield of the production as well as manage the maintenance through predictive models. If we're then following the project towards the commercialization, of course, the topic of digital tech transfer pops up, and it's a strong importance to link CMC with the counterparts in the commercial manufacturing space. And getting closer then to the submission time, we're talking about predictive models for stability, as well as automation of reporting and generation of submissions. So this whole ecosystem then zipped by the knowledge management that allows you to track the information and leverage the wealth of data across the projects and portfolio. These are, of course, not exhaustive examples, but this is just to show what we are talking about in terms of all of those individual elements where, for example, digital tech transfer, it's only a small piece of the bigger puzzle. And here, when we talk about use cases and future, we cannot not talk about generative AI. So we've recently had this as a topic of our CMC roundtable in June. And what we've learned is that majority of the organizations are already adopting generative AI in one or the other way. In most cases, it's still those relatively generic off-the-shelf chatbots like GPT or Copilots, but we are also seeing organizations that are building bespoke solutions to solve specific issues CMC related. But when we talk about generative AI, there are basically two camps. When we surveyed our participants, we see one camp, around 30% of the population here, that says that yes, generative AI is there, but we consider this only as a tool in the broader toolkit. It will improve, but it will not be transformational. Well, 70% of the responders said that this is a truly disruptive technology that will change the way how we think about CMC. So I would like to pause here for a moment and do this in our exercise here, just to get the sentiment from the group, okay? So if you believe that generative AI is just a tool in the toolkit, please raise your hand. Okay, a few hands in the air. So, and if you think that it's truly revolutionizing technology that will change the way how we operate in CMC. Okay, so I see a similar pattern. Probably within this group, we have even more excitement of what generative AI can be. Probably it's a sample bias, but I can only root for that and then hope that this is really the case, that the technology will help to solve many of the business problems that we're facing today. An interesting part about the vision that I just described is that all those elements are not really visionary. All of those elements exist in some maturity level across the industry. So the magic really is with scaling those up and then linking them all together. And when I mentioned that industry is already applying and deploying many of those use cases, I wanted to show how it actually looks by the numbers. So when we look at the adoption across small molecules and biologics, across various digital use cases, we can see that small molecules in general are a little bit more progressed. So the small molecule CMC workflows are a little bit more progressed in terms of digitization than their biologics counterparts. And this is mostly pronounced in the area of predictive models. And I believe that this is something understood because of the complexity of biological systems compared to the chemistry, and also the wealth of data and information and insights that we have throughout the development of the chemistry over the decades. The good examples here are, for example, the formulation development models, where for small molecule oral solid dosages, we see plenty of off-the-shelf solutions for dissolutions models for bioavailability. Similar things for the in silico stability models, where ASAP Prime has been used routinely by small molecule organizations, not only for development and decision making, but also for the regulatory submissions. The next area that is particularly mature is the physical automation of the process. It's all about robotics, high throughput, and we are seeing that companies have plenty of those use cases deployed across the CMC value chain. And of course, this is relatively easy if we look at it from the perspective of local solutions that you can deploy without the need for integration across the organization. And then we are entering the space of CMC digitalization, and as I mentioned, this one was the least mature for the good reasons. So when we discuss the challenges of the CMCs and the things that people struggle when orchestrating work across the CMC workflows, one topic comes to mind very often, and it's silos. It's not only related to digital, but it's related to how the CMC is organized. We've got parallel functions working on drug substance development, drug product development, analytical development, separate functions for clinical supply. We've got labs in one location, pilot plants in other locations. Sites are very often spread across the whole globe, across the multiple continents. And the data and then systems architecture reflects this picture as well. So we've got very often a patchwork of different system solutions that were deployed locally in different places that it's now difficult to connect. Hopefully, then generative AI will somehow start to help with that, especially in the space of knowledge management around generation of technical and then regulatory reports. But there is still a long way to go. These were examples of the on a relatively high level, right? And I wanted to bring a couple of real-life examples that we've seen across the industry at our clients, just to bring more color to those more theoretical ideas. So the first one that I wanted to bring in here is in the predictive modeling space. One of the top pharma organizations has been on a digital journey for several years. As one of their key use cases, selected modeling of their formulation development, more specifically lyophilization process. And this is not just an off-the-shelf solution. This is something that they've nurtured internally. And right now, this is used not only to reduce the consumption of API during the whole development, but also to waive some of the technical batches during the scale-up and transfer, which eventually translates into millions of dollars of savings that they've already achieved in the first year of operations. Another area where we are seeing quite interesting examples and success stories is automation. A very recent implementation of an automated sample management system. So an organization that has a relatively new development center for their biologics part of the pipeline, and they've installed a centralized storage for the samples, and then we've got robots, autonomous robots, which are roaming the whole floor and managing the samples. So the vision, and it's not a vision, and actually how it works in practice is that the scientist sitting remotely at home can say, what is the sample that he would like to focus on the next day? And the robot overnight will get it from the freezer and will bring it to his desk so that he doesn't need to look through the freezer and then wait for the sample to be at the right temperature. Pretty cool stuff if you think about it from the perspective of a person in the lab. A next example here, also from the robotics area, is a fully automatized high-throughput laboratory for formulation development. It is like a 50 square meters room that basically operates with no manual intervention by now, and it's also equipped with the system that it's collecting all the wealth of data from the high-throughput technologies. So this is already proving helpful in supporting the regulatory submissions as well. And the last, probably not as advanced and not as scaled example, but I just wanted to bring something from the generative AI area. And this one is about management of the external guidance documents that are being updated throughout the world in a regular fashion. This one allows scientists not only to browse the guidelines and get the respective information faster, but also track all the changes and identify the risk and the changes that you need to introduce to your internal development, considering the new regulations. Good. So these are examples from CMC, but I thought it would be helpful to also bring some of the learnings from adjacent areas. We'll stay still in the area of pharma R&D, so not that far away. And the first example is from the research side. Here we are looking at the research lab that was focusing on mRNA constructs, and in this particular case, the leadership formulated a very ambitious target to improve the throughput as well as reduce the cycle time of the whole process. The site was already up and running, but it was organized in a very isolated areas of individual parts of the process, and hence the process was not fully optimized. What was done here was, first of all, mapping the whole process end to end, identifying 6 or 7 areas which were the bottlenecks, and then working on them in terms of the further automation or adding some digital tools to make them more efficient. But the true transformation in terms of the impact here came from bringing them all together into one train of activities instead of having them at isolated stations. And for that, you can see quite a tremendous impact. But the learning for CMC here is that even if you've got relatively modern lab, but the way how you operate it is in a very fragmented and siloed way, you may not be able to harvest the full potential of your equipment and of your technology. The next case example is also from the research space, and here we're talking about another lab that looked at it not so much from the automation perspective, but from the layer of AI that you can put on top of the existing processes to aid with development of your new compounds. In this case, we've got 3 main steps that were, or 3 main elements of the transformation. The first one was the process of designing the lead candidates that have the best profile of stability and potency. The second one is about constructing a vector that will be then used to connect with the construct, and that will serve as a stabilization as well as managing its profile of toxicity. And the third one is the layer of in silico translational models. What that means in practice is that it links the information on the input, so what was the characteristics of the compound that came to the preclinical testing, with the output of preclinical experiments. What are the biomarkers in preclinical space, what is the impact on them, and then also to connect it to the clinical outcomes if the specific compound reaches the clinical stage. So this creates a closed loop to inform the models and algorithms at the beginning of the process, and it learns from the actual outputs, not necessarily generated in the lab, but from the real world benefit for the clients, for the patients, sorry. And here again, quite a substantial impact that we've seen from development, but I wanted to highlight one of the KPIs here, which is an important lesson for CMC as well, which is number of users that are using the solution daily. So you can introduce a very fancy, sophisticated tool, but if you will not make it very in a democratized way, and you will restrict it for the operating from 2 of your top scientists, you are creating bottlenecks that will not be solved. So making sure that the tools, the products that you are developing are actually reaching the broad population of people that can benefit from that. The last of those external case examples is probably less exciting from the perspective of there are no robots that are helping with the process, there are no AI models, but it's equally powerful. We're talking here about the concept of control tower that will help you to collect information from across the value chain for clinical trial operations to identify risks and drive well-informed decisions. In this case, the company was facing quite substantial problems with the delivery of their clinical trials. They also expected the pipeline to grow, and considering how complex their vendor landscape was, it was just not sustainable to manage that without a centralized or automated system. And the solution that was provided here was this one source of truth that combined information from disparate sources coming from different sites, from different vendors, from different systems, to inform the business on their key problems at the level of the whole portfolio, meaning how are we against our general targets for delivery against across all the trials. Second one is on the trial module, where you can have more operationally control what's happening with the trial. Are you on track with your recruiting goals or not? And the third one, on the individual site, clinical site level, where you basically can track if the site is over or underperforming, and if there is any intervention that is needed to get it up to speed. And again, important KPI, number of users across the organization. Here it comes in thousands, and this, by the sheer volume of people that are actually using, it's already generating value for the business. So we know that some companies are a little bit more successful with the implementation of their digital transformation, and then some are less. And we've collected those most common challenges that organizations typically face. Let me quickly go through them without getting into too detailed discussions. I believe that many of you experience similar challenges in your organizations. So first of all, it's this tendency to focus on the very long transformational programs that are very often linked to specific technology or data management and the systems that you want to introduce, and they work in parallel without connectivity and without the common business goal. Second one is what we could call the pilot purgatory, meaning that the organization is driving lots of pilots, but there is no organized way to decide which of the pilots will be scaled up and introduced in production. The second one is the fact that we've got two worlds here. We've got the scientists working in a wet lab, and we've got the IT group. They talk different languages, and if you don't manage to get them to a common understanding what is the business goal, you'll have two separate work streams of improvements that at the end may not necessarily reach the common goal and understanding. The next one, it also speaks to the nature of the scientists. We love to experiment, we love to test new things out, but to be really business and impact oriented, you need to be also disciplined and clearly state what you want to invest in so that you are not too fragmented on development of shiny, small things that will automate the process number 1237, but will not bring too much value across the whole organization. And the last, probably but not least, is the lack of general strategy. How do you build this internal muscle and internalize the tools that you develop in collaboration with the partners? It's obvious that you cannot build everything in-house. We are not data houses or tech companies in pharma, but you need to have a clear way how to make sure that you will be able to maintain and develop the solutions without too high dependency on the vendors. And now, I wanted to pause for a moment on the first one, where I said the long-term transformation, typically technology-oriented, and I wanted to illustrate it with the story that dates back to 1870s, right? This is a story of electricity. That should be a technology that is completely revolutionizing the industry, but what we've experienced here is that it took basically 4 decades before the industry and then the factories actually started to adopting that. Of course, this is nowhere near the timelines that we are talking about the digital transformation, hopefully. But the main reason why it was not successful in the first few decades of existence is that the business was not ready to transform itself to use the technology and its potential, right? So they were not able to change the architecture, their production systems, and then the ways of working, and most importantly, how to train and develop the capabilities of their staff. So, keeping that in mind, it only somehow underscores the importance of focusing really on your business value, not necessarily on the technology. So moving away from the approach where you say, okay, this is a new technology and now we're going to try to build some use cases on top of that, to focus on the business-oriented and impact-oriented strategy where you look for specific opportunities, specific challenges that you want to solve, package them in a very specific definition, and then look at use cases that will help for that, and for those use cases, pick the technology that will serve best this particular item. It's easier said than done, but there are some cheat sheets for that. And through our work with the organizations that are on the journey of digital transformation, we've identified 6 building blocks of a successful transformation. The first one is all about the business value and business impact and having a blueprint or a roadmap how you really want to get there. The second element is about your technologies and capabilities that you will use for that purpose. And here we are talking about digital and analytics, we are talking about data, we are talking about technical infrastructure, but also something that is very often neglected is the talent in this more soft space and the agile operating model. So ability to really deliver the projects which are not pharma projects, that are technology projects. And then the last element, which is critical to harvest the business value, is of course adoption and scaling. We're talking here about the change management plan, how you're gonna take it from the pilots to the fully developed solution. So what we've seen very often is that the companies that embark on the digital journey, they focus on those three technical elements, so data, systems, and digital and analytics, right? And they will put them as horizontal plans, isolated programs that will last for multiple years. And that basically pushes out the generation of the value way into the future, and it's also it's very difficult to manage and to change if you've got any disruptions or any change in the business objectives. So what we've developed as a framework to help with bridging all those building blocks is what we call the quarterly value release approach. And that basically pivots this horizontal way of introducing the innovation to the vertical approach where the cross-functional teams work on addressing all elements of all 6 building blocks and are working in a much shorter intervals. We are talking about the 3 to 6 months interval, so it's not this 3-year long journey of introduction of the new IRT system, but really something that is packed very tightly. And what's important here is that it will include also, and for most, the users that are that will be benefiting from delivery of those use cases. Those users not only are included in the design of that solution, but also they are the ones that are actually providing a demo to the governance body at the end of each cycle, and then the decision is made, what do you do next with this project? Are you continuing it? Are you scaling this up? Are you building additional modules? Or do you think that the value that it brings is actually nowhere near what were your expectations, and you want to close it and focus on something that currently will be more prioritized? In this way, you're much more nimble and much faster to actually react to any changes in your strategy. And this looks like a traditional consulting jargon and format, but I just wanted to say that it's not just a theoretical exercise. And this was published, I believe, on our pages already 2.5 years ago. But this is backed up with actual client work and experience. So when we look back at the examples that I shared, like the AI-enabled research lab or the clinical control tower, they actually followed this exact framework. So I wanted to pause here and see if there are any reactions, maybe reflections, maybe someone this resonates better than for the others. Yes?
Microphone? No, okay. So I'm fully aligned with what you had on your slide about all of these POCs and we never scale it and everything. I think we have seen that. And moving to a more productized approach, agile methodology. What I have seen as a challenge is budgeting. Because most of our budgeting is still done based on project, where basically you do business case, or ROI or something, you have a 2 or 3 years project that's approved, and that's why you end up with this shallow long-term transformation program and everything. Like, how did these leading companies solve that? Like, is there a productized budget available and they can decide their prioritization along the way? Because that's what we are struggling with, explaining sometimes to our finance department is that, okay, you want us to move to a productized approach and you give me buckets of money in terms of project and ROI. So like, how did they bridge that gap?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's an excellent question. And I believe that the first thing that needs to be there is commitment, right? So you need to want to embark on this journey, and you need to understand that it will carry some costs in the process. How you're budgeting it, it's much more complex. So across the industry, we've seen multiple models, right? In some cases, it's the CMC that has their own pocket money that will try to do something, but it's typically limited. Sometimes there is no pocket money and you just try to squeeze it in somewhere, but this will not be sustainable, right? But in many cases, there are additional separate budgets that are sitting at the level of R&D or broader organizations where you need to apply for, and then if you're approved, you can go ahead, right? And I see you smiling because I understand how difficult it is to build the business case for digital things, right? But what's easier is to build a business case for 3 months of work than for a larger transformation where you cannot really expect what's going to be the impact. Here, just putting it into bite-sized elements that you can define a little bit better, and that potentially will consume less resources.
Okay. Our budgeting cycle is 6 to 9 months. So, but good insight. I think we have to change, I think, how we do that if we want to go to such type of model.
Thank you. Any other questions, observations? If not, thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to the next sessions and hear also other insights from the others. Thank you very much.